Alright, here we are with episode 4 of A Champion Judgment. Today we will be featuring Kog'Maw. I'm happy to get into our first range champion, see how our design's different with a vastly different type of champion than the first 3 ones we did. As always, my name is Chris, and joining me is my longtime patch review duo partner, Jason.
Hey, Chrissy, always good to be with you, especially on this series. I would say Kog'Maw was probably the hardest one that I had a hard time coming up with as far as like a new design, because to me, he's a champion that wasn't that problematic compared to the other 2 that we did.
I agree.
And therefore, it wasn't like, what little things do I need to do to make him like, a decent champ that could be in the game in a healthy way, but rather, how can I actually improve this guy?
I had the same thoughts.
Nice, nice. So, is that why you picked it? You just wanted something very different as far as a champ that wasn't problematic?
Well, twofold, yes. I feel like the first 3 champs we did had a certain amount of things in common, not just the fact that they were melee. Mm-hmm. And I thought he was dated and lacking expression enough for a void monster, you know?
Yeah, he definitely is an older champ. Where they're probably thinking less about how do we really marry the thematics with the gameplay.
Something like that, yeah. All right, why don't we just give a brief rundown? You'll be going first this time. I'm not feeling super well, so hopefully your kit won't put me over the top. And
I hope you like this one.
We'll see. I guess I'm kind of a harsh critic. I don't know.
I would say so.
Yeah, I'm tough to please. Yeah, so why don't you talk about what you think his strengths and weaknesses real quick?
Okay.
Without going into your kit or anything.
Yeah, so right now, where Kog'Maw is in the game, here's what I think is fun about him. I think like the late game rapid fire barf with his W, the Bioarcane Barrage I think it's called, it is game changing and it is fun. To just like rapidly literally spit fire at someone. It is really fun and rewarding as a support player to grow the Cog, to be able to get him through that early game and then see him go off late.
Well, I think it's acid really in his base skin, you know.
I see. But he is barfing the acid. I mean, he's like spitting it up. I mean, I guess it's not technically spit, right? But he's spitting the acid.
I was under the assumption that basically all of his attack are like some kind of acid, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think whatever is coming up from his system is acidic. I love that this is the discussion we're having about gameplay reworks.
Well, I think it's an important part of his actual theme.
Okay. We've got the fact that before this recent somewhat disastrous ADC item rework, Kog'Maw was a really refreshing kind of attack speed on hit champ, where you didn't really have many ADCs that were truly like that. Until now, all ADCs became that. You know, with the Bork, the Kraken Slayer, the Wit's End Stormrazor, Static Shiv, all that crap. And I do think that his snipes with his ultimate, when you manage to like snipe someone from long range, that is a really great high moment in the game for the Kog'Maw without being unfair or uninteractive. Like there's a lot of ways to outplay that snipe too. And then I just like that he's somehow gross and cute all at once. So that's what I think is really fun and cool about Kog'Maw, and for the most part, what I was trying to keep in my rework.
Okay, well...
And then,
Or you got more?
Oh, I was going to move on to the things I don't like about him, unless there's things that you want to say that you really like.
Oh, why don't you finish your bit?
Okay, so here's what I don't like about Cog, right? First of all, the passive... The fact that it's like, some like zombie form that runs around a little bit and then explodes dealing damage, that does not belong on an ADC. It just straight up does not belong on any ADC or any type of hyper carry where essentially the goal is to keep him alive. It's stupid. It's dated design. It is fun, don't get me wrong, but it really is just sucking his power budget without interacting well with any of the rest of his kit or gameplay patterns. So that
Oh,
passive had to go, and that passive went.
I'm disappointed to hear
Um,
you say that.
really? Okay. Um, I felt a little bit sad taking it out because I do think that passive is fun, but it absolutely does not belong on an ADC. Sorry. He is overly teammate reliant, because he lacks self peel so much, and because he's not even a great duelist. His Voidoo's, the E, feels like it's barely worth using late game. It's just not worth taking the time to use that skill compared to actually just firing on someone. I feel like Kog'Maw overall swings wildly between overpowered and underpowered due to changes in the meta. Whether you have an assassin meta, whether you have a tank meta, whether supports or particularly enchanters versus like engaged tank supports are good. His power swings wildly, and therefore I think he's been tough to balance over the years. And yeah, now that we have this whole like ADC on hit Doom build meta for almost every ADC in the game, he's no longer a refreshingly different build. In fact, now his build is arguably even more inflexible than it was before because of this rework. Like before, yeah, he had to go some sort of on hit to be effective, but there was a few different ways you could do that, and at least it was different from most of the ADCs in the game. And then finally, I just have a note that he rewards scripters who aren't even good at scripting. I've seen a couple of Kog'Maw scripters who are just the most obvious about it because they'll just keep running at you until they'll move like the slightest little bit out of the way if you use a skill shot. But if you use another skill that looks like a skill shot, like your champ has the same animation, they won't move at all. They'll just keep running at you. And he rewards those scripters because they don't need to actually like move and click your champ to attack at the same time. It's just all automatic kiting essentially while they fire at exactly the rate they're supposed to. So that I say lightheartedly, right? Obviously we don't want scripters in the game at all. But those are the things that I felt were kind of problematic about Kog'Maw, and I feel like I fixed all of them.
Hmm. Well, my turn,
But
I
you'll
guess.
tell me whether I did.
Well, I first 100% agree with you. I do think
Uh-huh.
Kog'Maw, Callista, Teemo, Xerath, I do think those are like the most scripted champions in the game over
Yep.
like my lifespan of seeing champs that look like they were scripted. I do 100% agree. That's completely true. Kog'Maw is probably number one or number two on that list. I think Callista is a pretty hard one for that. And I can't really disagree with most of what you said. I think a lot of it's pretty obvious where he stands. I think he's a great example of what a hyper carry is and the obvious strengths and obvious weaknesses of a hyper carry. The things I like about him are, while I do think he's very different from Corki, I like how they kind of exist in that magic damage 80 carry uh, atmosphere
Yeah, I agree with
that's
that.
separate from the other 80 carries. And I
Mhm.
also completely agree with you. His dueling potential is not really non-existent. It's basically just a DPS check with him. It's not very
Mhm.
exciting, and I do agree that I did pimp out his kiting potential since he has no, laughable steroids and no escape or movement speed buffs. So I agree with you on all that.
Yeah, I gave him some ways to peel himself that are hard to do, but would reward a lot of forethought or just good play.
And then another
Um,
thing is, yeah, I like the fact that he's seen kind of as, along with Vayne, as kind of the go-to like tank buster, 80 carry. I would say. Would you agree with that? I think he's kind of his
um,
niche.
yeah, I think Kai'Sa's up there too, but I would agree that that Kog'Maw is definitely a tank buster with his on hit percent health magic damage for sure.
Yeah, and then I also agree with you that he is way too team dependent for the kind of this day and age. I think.
Yeah, I don't mind, somewhat teammate reliant carries, but I think that that Kog'Maw might be the single most teammate reliant champion in the game, maybe. Certainly up
Yeah,
there.
I'd have to say because even something like Ash is like has a lot more tools.
Yeah, at least Ash can peel and kite a lot better than Kog can. without scripting.
All right.
Yeah, I think we're in complete agreement, and I'm sure we'll have wildly different ways of trying to improve his kit.
I'm not as pleased with my Tryndamere rework, but I am. I think this is my second best one. I'm very happy. I knew what I wanted to do, or I had an idea for what I wanted to do from like the second I chose Kog'Maw, but I didn't
Hmm.
know how I was going to work out everything else that was going to shape around it.
Uh-huh.
So, but I am very happy with what I came up with. I actually think it. I was so in love with my Tryndamere though that this is definitely. I feel really good about how the creative places I went with this though. And like always, I am very obsessive with maintaining the champion's like original theme and like kind of the inspiration behind their original abilities and stuff. I always try to be loyal to the original design because I think that's very important with a rework.
Okay. Um, so I will start with my stat changes. After that, we're gonna skip the passive for now, because it kind of ties into to all the other stuff I'm gonna talk about. But I did present several stat changes for Kog'Maw. I have his attack range up by 50 from 500 to 550. I have his base attack damage. I took 10% away from that at all levels. I increased his attack speed by 10%. It's now going to be 0.732, which is quite fast. It would put him up in like maybe the top 10, 15 of champs in the game. Bonus attack speed, a little bit less. Instead of growing from 0 to 45%, it will now grow from 0 to 30%. When we get to the ultimate, you'll see why he doesn't need as much bonus attack speed. And and I do have him getting more max mana, particularly at level 1, 400 from 325, a little bit more at 18 as well.
Oh my god. I just happened to catch the name of your passive and it looks like we might have had a lot of the same ideas.
Oh,
That's
all
pretty
right.
this is
Well,
cute.
we'll
But
come back and see it. But
okay,
thanks.
we're going to the queue.
All right, yeah, move all the way down 2 pages to the queue.
What the hell? Okay, I passed something absurd on the way there. Okay, I'm on the
Yeah,
queue now.
this is the most like time and effort I've spent actually writing up a champion design so far.
All
Okay,
right.
so we've got the queue, and I call this a Cathian Chime Biomissile. Is it Chime? I think it's Chime. The thing that mixes in your stomach, with the food, become the anyway. And if you pay attention, the abbreviation of this is ICBM. So this is actually
Oh,
going to have
I
this is
approve.
actually so this is actually going to have somewhat similar mechanics to his current R, at least in the way that you use it and how it
Oh
looks.
my god, I did
Uh,
this. I did the same thing.
you put it on his queue?
I did. I put his old ultimate on his queue.
Wow, dude. Wow. We have some type of like weird, like 3,000 miles away synergy on this one, I guess. Um, I have it
That
as a 16 to 6 second cooldown, so much longer than it is on his R right now. 60 mana flat, and pretty quick, but not instant cast time, so we can't just use it while he's auto attacking or using his other skills. But quicker than most other skills in the game. So what's going to happen is it's going to be 0.75 seconds, and then it's going to be a slightly larger area of effect when it lands than his current R. So Cog spits a globule of acid into the air, and see, it's both spit and acid, at least the way I see it. That drops to the target location after zero point 0.6 seconds, granting sight of the area before dealing 10 to 90, plus 60% AD, plus 30% AP, magic damage to enemies hit and revealing them to 2 seconds. So far, very much the same as, and in fact, also the damage increase based on missing health is also exactly the same as his current R. So only difference there is a lot less base damage.
now I
Um,
see right here, and I did some research, and people are able to see your document now that I pulled up. So everyone's looking at your document right now.
oh, cool, cool,
S
cool. Okay.
But I have Cogmaw's champion page in the background. Okay, now I see right here you have living artillery. Is that
Yes.
is that still part of his kit in the same time as his Q?
Living Artillery is his new ultimate.
Oh, okay.
And
That's his name of his ultimate now.
yes, I've changed everything about the ultimate except for the name.
Okay, okay.
I thought it was a cool name, so
No,
I kept
I
it.
agree. I kept it too.
Nice. So yeah, the biggest point of the queue is going to be that there's is going to be as a stack builder for the ultimate. You know, you'll see how that works when we get there. So you get 3 stacks just for hitting enemy champions, and you hit more than one champion, you'll get 1 additional stack per champ beyond the first. And so this will largely be used in the same like poke patterns and long range finishers as his current ultimate.
Hold on. Let me see. If you
Yep.
hit them once with this, you get to shoot them 3 more times. Is that right?
No, remember this is the ICBM. Hitting them grants you stacks of living artillery.
Oh, so this is a different type of projectile.
So this is a Q this is his Q, right? And it looks and acts a lot like his current R, right? It's
Okay.
going to give him stacks of his new R.
Oh, okay. So the last
Yes, sir.
part of it is just explaining how it modifies his ultimate.
The hitting any enemy champion.
Yeah.
Right. It will
Okay.
grant stacks. I guess as a little bit of a spoiler, you're going to need stacks to use your ultimate.
Okay. Okay. I thought that meant he was able to use his Q like had a stock system or something.
No, no, no. The Q is just a straight 16 to 6 second cooldown. No increasing mana cost, no stock system.
Okay. I got you.
Yep, yep. And you know, for those of you who are like really MMO devoted, you'll know like the terms like builders and spenders. So this is a builder.
Okay.
All right. So that's his Q. Any thoughts, or should I just move right on to the W?
Now I got the gist of it. When we going back to the passive?
Uh, After all the skills.
Okay. So W.
All right, his W is called Field of Flora, and this is going to be a new skill at rank 1. It's a very long cooldown of 36 seconds, moving all the way down to 14 seconds at rank 5. 80 mana, and the way this will work is Kog'Maw spits an enzyme along the ground in the target direction, 1500 range, which is, I think, somewhat longer than his current E, Voidus.
Can I interrupt
Uh,
you for a second?
Go ahead, my friend.
I noticed if this is the equivalent of Voidy's, you swapped the position of Voidoo's and Bioarcane Barrage on his abilities, because
Um,
Bioarcane Barrage is his current W.
that's correct.
So that was purposeful.
It is purposeful because I was thinking like, what are the types of skills that are normally on champions Qs, Ws, and Es? And this being kind of his most like utility, longest cooldowns skill is likely to appear on his W if you were to redesign from scratch. Yeah.
I actually feel like a lot of like the longer dashes or utility spells are on champions E's, like
Well,
Shen, Fiora.
dashes
Yeah.
are often on the E. Yeah, but this isn't a dash.
All right.
Um, I feel like the ones that are a little bit harder to hit or require more skill are usually on the E rather than the W, and his new E is going to require a lot of precision to hit.
All right. All right. Start over on the W.
No problem. So it's a new skill, 36 to 14-second cooldown. He spits an enzyme along the ground with a pretty long range. It rolls around the ground in a thin line, causing the ground beneath it to teem with slippery gut flora. And that flora is going to slowly spread outwards to a width. So basically, he spits a very thin line that rolls away from him.
Oh my
And then
god.
once that line has been down for like a second, slowly, starting from where he spit it, it will start spreading slowly outwards to the sides.
I kind of have something like this too. This is crazy how
No,
similar as ours
you're
are.
you're kidding me.
No, seriously, this is part of one of my things. It's
You
not
have
quite
something
like
that rolls out and then to the sides?
I have something that spreads, kind of. Yeah,
Wow. Okay, so like spreads in a circle or something?
I'll let you know when we get there.
I am flabbergasted right now, man. Um, you know, we're like so. so diligent about not letting each other know anything about what we're doing. Uh, so the width also increases with the rank of the skill, and then once it reaches its max range, which which remember, the longer the width, the longer it'll take to reach its max range as well, because it's spreading out farther. It'll last 2 seconds after it reaches its full width. So, what does this field of flora do? Champions moving along that field of flora have 30% extra movement speed, but greatly reduced ability to turn or stop.
Oh, that's
So you
new.
kind of have a yeah, you kind of have a lot of inertia. It's almost like you're sliding on ice with a little bit of control over where you're going.
You turn it into Dota 2 controls. That's what happens in Dota 2. You actually have to turn around.
Oh, really? That's interesting. So
Yeah,
you're almost moving like a very fast tank in Dota 2.
yeah, I guess so.
Interesting. I've never played that game. I have seen it once or twice, but I didn't realize that's what was happening.
It's really bad because they purposely completely mimicked the engine of Warcraft 3's Dota 1. That's why it's just so clunky like that.
I see. Kog'Maw has an additional. So Kog'Maw himself has additional movement speed. Just 2% at rank 1, 14% at rank 5, and then a little bit more for each 100 AP that you have. While he's moving along that field. So he still will be slippery and have less control over where he's going, but at least he'll be really fast. Enemies, including non-champions, have their armor and magic resist reduced by 12 to 28% and are grounded while they're standing on this field. So, just in case anybody forgot, grounded means can't dash, can't blink. When Kog'Maw basic attacks an enemy champion that is standing on this field, he gains 1 stack of living artillery. Yep. And then I just have some notes about how fast the thing will roll out, a little bit slower than Voidoo's, and just an artistic note that you can imagine almost like if you've ever seen the Extremophiles in like the geysers at Yellowstone, where they're like this like pale rainbow of colors. That's almost what I picture it looking like a shimmering pale rainbow, kind of like over the terrain that's already there. So yeah, the purpose of this is partially defensive to send your enemies in unintended directions for creative kiting. You can send them in one direction and then flash over a wall. You can juke like you're going to go in one direction and they'll turn that way if you're not standing in the Voidus,
The
and then
orc
start
cloud.
running the other way. I think there's a lot of creative ways to use this one defensively. Because you are moving a little bit faster, you can also use it to straight run away, but that wouldn't be its highest and best use. And then offensively, you can also use it to chase an enemy who's well ahead of you, where you're touching the Voidus and they're not. If they're running in a predictable pattern. But remember, they could still juke you if you're trying to slide after them. The final use of this skill is just to make other skills easier to hit, because when enemies are sliding and can't juke on a dime, their path will be a little bit more predictable, so it'll be easier to hit your Q. And when we get to the E next, it'll also be a little bit easier to hit that. So it's it's just a very different take on his current simple, put out a field and slow people type of kiting.
One thing I like to do in my designs is I never try to create any extra mechanic in the game that there isn't already a precedent for it to exist.
What's
But
that?
I do really appreciate this innovation. This is some kind of bizarre pseudo-negative tenacity thing you got going over here. I really like this. Am I correct? I'm looking at it, but am I correct that this has no damage component? This ability?
That is correct. No damage component, just
Okay.
armor MR shred is the closest thing to it.
Okay.
Yeah, this is all about strategic positioning, peel, and just creativity.
All right. I like it.
Thanks, Gracie. All right. So, moving on to his E. I call this Ort Cloud.
I like it.
I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're like it, hate it. 5 out of 10.
I gotta be honest. This one is at least already a 7 for me.
Thanks, man.
I'm really liking this one so far.
All right. So we've got the Ort Cloud. This is a completely new skill. Moderately long cooldown, 20 to 12 seconds, 100 mana. It is expensive. So So we've got 800 range and 275 radius. That's kind of a medium range prediction skill, and a little bit larger than Graves' smoke screen. I bring that up as a comparison because this will also have a near side effect. Again, quick but not instant cast time. And so for this, Kog'Maw farts.
Uh-oh, you lost
Uh,
2 points for being too goofy.
I think that like Kog'Maw is like a goofy version of like a Void Champ, personally. I mean,
That's why I
even just
said too goofy, though.
all right, all right.
Now, is
Um,
this a projectile like Graves' smokescreen?
this is not a projectile. I'll explain in just a second how it works. Um, but the fart is an Oort cloud. It's like a space nebula. Come on, that's cool.
I love the name, yeah.
All right. So 1.25 seconds after when he actually uses the skill, it causes a visual effect, but no immediate gameplay effect. Nothing happens, basically just everybody will be able to see that you pooted. And then a little over 1 second later, a gaseous Oort cloud appears at the location that you had targeted. No one saw where you were actually targeting until it appears. So think a little bit like an Echo W. For 2 to 4 seconds based on rank. Enemy champions, large minions, and large/epic monsters in the Oort cloud take magic damage, 150 to 350 per second. That's pretty high. Plus 40% AP. And they deal
Wait.
15.
They,
Yes.
you mean they take that? That can't be. They can't be like per second. That's got to be over duration. That's way too high for a non-ultimate ability.
That's per second, but it's pretty easy to get out of this cloud. Remember, it's only a 275 radius, so as long as you're walking out of it, you're in there for less than 1 second. Um,
Those numbers seem pretty crazy for how long it could potentially last.
I believe it's hard to hit, and that's why I've done this, but we could turn down the numbers if you think it's too high. And they also deal 15 to 35% based on rank less damage to Kog'Maw while they're in the cloud and for 1 second afterwards. These effects, the damage and the offensive reduction, are reduced by 60% against champions that are immobilized at any point after Kog'Maw uses the animation. So in other words, you can't just have like an enemy. You can't have an ally stun an enemy for 2 seconds or root an enemy for 2 or 3 seconds with a Morgana bind, and then just target that enemy and boom, you have like 1,000 magic damage.
So if they were like displaced by Jarvan's ultimate, this would do much less damage if he did this on top of Cataclysm.
Yes, if they actually were displaced by it.
Okay, I guess that works out. I still
Mm-hmm.
think I think a good
You
way
still
to
think the magic damage
judge.
is too high?
Yeah, a good way to judge, I think, a damage an ability's base numbers is like
Uh-huh.
how powerful would it be on a support if none of the ratios mattered since they don't have that much gold to buy AP or AD.
That's a really interesting point. So maybe I could, for example, take down the base damage and add some small AD component to this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or
that's a really good point.
because I look at this and I'm like, what if this was actually a rework? What would
Hmm.
stop someone from ranking up this Firth and going like support Kog'Maw and just harassing with this? And there's way worse champions that harass
Extreme
more.
difficulty in hitting it.
Yeah, there's way worse champions that harass more effectively with less damage than these numbers. So I think that would be pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think this is very hard to hit unless you've made a perfect prediction, like an enemy is coming out of vision and moving straight towards you, or if they're immobilized, where I have the reduction in place for exactly that.
So if they're
Um,
affected by Kog'Maw's W, this just does much less damage.
well, the W is not an immobilization. It just the W is just essentially like a lack of turning radius, right?
Oh, okay.
So this would go on its full effect through the W. And again, I kind of agree with you when you're bringing up this point that probably I should turn down the base damage on it a little bit. So maybe 100 plus 40 at each rank instead.
Well, the way you got it here, this is basically like 4 times stronger than Morgana's W base numbers.
Well, yes, but Morgana, the whole play pattern is you hold them in a bind and then you lay the W down on them.
Yeah, I hear
And
you.
Yeah, they're supposed to be immobilized. I get what you're saying though. Like I agree. On further discussion, these numbers probably should be taken down a little bit as far as the damage.
Not to mention this wave clear potential is absolutely redonkulous. That's not healthy.
No, it's not. Enemy champions, large minions, and large slash
Oh,
epic
you're
monster
right.
damage.
So no small minions could take damage from this?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Good catch.
All right. Finally, enemy champions in the Orc Cloud are also nearsighted, only while they're in the cloud, not afterwards. The nearsight won't be as constrictive as Smokescreen or Paranoia are right now. But it'll be lower than their normal radius. Again, to give Kog'Maw the opportunity to maybe throw like a creative W and escape where people aren't seeing him.
So, like, more than Quinn's Q, but less than Smokescreen, less than Graves and Nocturnes?
Uh,
Quinn's Q
less,
does the same thing.
yeah, less restrictive than Nocturnes or Graveses. Yes,
Okay.
like a less powerful near side. Yeah, I'm trying to think. It's been a little while since I've gone against a Quinn, but yeah, I think somewhere probably around that.
Well, hers is
Yeah.
smaller than both of these.
Oh, hers is smaller, so you have it's even more constrictive. No, this would be a larger radius that your opponents would be able to see.
Okay.
All right. Um, and I think that's okay because Kog'Maw is going to be hitting you at range. Each enemy champion who touches the Orc Cloud grants Kog'Maw one stack of his ultimate Livering Artillery, and an additional one stack for every second that they stand in it where they're not immobilized.
So, one last thing. We've established that
Mhm.
it could be very easy for this to do significantly less damage, but this could also potentially be a 4-second nearsighted effect. Because that's
Yes.
incredibly strong.
If somebody is immobilized within it, it would be a 4 second weak near sight. That is correct.
That is incredibly strong.
Um, yes, it's strong. But that would need to be someone on your team would need to immobilize them. You would need to be in sync with them, and then they'd also take very little damage from it while they're there. So unless there's like nobody within like I don't know 400, 450 range of them, they're gonna have someone they can hit.
True, but I'm assuming at some point we're going to get to some serious firepower in terms of auto attacks in this. So I feel like
Hmm.
the damage component is probably meaningless if they're nearsighted for that long.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a fair reward if you and a teammate have set that up so perfectly. Um,
That's pretty strong, man.
all right.
This champion could be there. This ability could be an ultimate. It's pretty big.
Do you think there would be some other effect that you'd rather have than the near sight, or do you feel like that could just be dropped and it would still be a strong ability? Because it sounds like that's how you're leaning.
I feel like the near sight should probably just be half of the duration at every level or something.
Well, the duration is while you're standing in the cloud.
Yeah, but I don't think it should have the potential to give near sight for the full 2 to 4 seconds.
Oh, okay. So you think it should just automatically turn off after 1.5 seconds or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean something like that could be done. Maybe if the first 1.5 seconds you're affected by Orc Cloud,
I,
you're nearsighted. I think
I,
that's
I
reasonable.
feel it's a little more excusable with Quinn because she's much more ability based. Against a hyper carry, I think this would be too strong.
All right. Anything else about the Orc Cloud?
No, it's a really powerful ability.
Yeah, I mean it's meant to be powerful, both for its ability to peel you with self-defense, and even for its offensive ability if you make the predict perfectly.
I like it because the
Hard to set
W
up.
is the W is very powerful too.
Yeah, I mean, I try to make abilities that feel good, and yeah, I mean, there's a possibility you'll tell me when we're finished, whether maybe like I've exceeded the power budget, and I would just need to trim it off from a lot of places. Um,
Well,
this is yeah,
I assume the ultimate passive in your version of Bioarcane Barrage, you're going to have some serious like carry potential within him, and all we've talked about are like the two utility spells, and they already seem very strong, basically.
So there is no Bioarcane Barrage per se in this kit, but the ultimate is gonna have some of the same properties that are being lost.
Okay, so we going back to the passive, or now we doing the ultimate?
We're gonna do the ultimate. This is
Okay.
Living Artillery.
Okie dokie.
This is a new skill with a 0.1 second cooldown and no cost. However, it requires you to have at least 3 Living Artillery stacks to use. The more stacks you have, the better. And you can hold the maximum of 20, 30, or 40 based on your rank stacks
Whew!
alone.
Holy moly.
Now remember, you have to earn these through, good use of your skills.
Can
You don't just,
this can the
you
stacks
don't,
ever time out?
yes. I
Okay.
believe
I don't think that's on here.
I okay, it's one of the italic things farther below. So since you mentioned that, go down to the second asterisk. After leaving combat with enemy champions, the stacks will fall off at a rate of 1 stack per 2 seconds.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So even if you've got 10 stacks, by the time you're out of combat for 20 seconds, they're gone. If you have 3 stacks, they'll fall off a lot quicker. Um, So it's use it or lose it, basically. And sometimes it would even be better to just take the stacks that you got from combat. Let's say you killed everyone, and instead of trying to save them for another combat, just go use them on a jungle creep or something, or a wave.
Alright,
So anyway,
let's go back to the
yeah,
top.
yep. So you've got his passive, where Kog'Maw will gain 3, 4, or 5, depending on rank, stacks of living artillery whenever he earns a takedown on an enemy champion or epic monster. Did not make that for large monsters because I don't really want Kog'Maw jungling.
Genius.
After preparing his stance for half a second, where he almost props himself up on his legs and assumes that turret form, Kog'Maw begins firing a barrage of goo projectiles straight forward at insane speed. I wasn't exactly sure how fast to make this, but what I came up with was 1.5 to 2 based on rank, plus 175% of whatever his attack speed is. So I would imagine a normal type of attack speed for his ultimate being like 3 to 4 per second. And he's firing these as projectiles. And he will do so for as long as you hold the R button down, or until he runs out of living artillery stacks. He can move during this time, but he's slowed by 60%. A lot less, 20%, if he's on a field of flora, if he's sliding along it. And his ability to turn is also greatly reduced, whether he's on the field of flora or not. So he is kind of like a slow-moving tank that's just spitting all kinds of crazy projectiles straight forward. Each projectile will travel up to 900 units, dealing 100% AD plus 50% of his bonus AD damage to the first enemy that it hits, and fully applying on hits. Additionally, it slows them by 5 to 20%, depending on rank, for 1 second. This damage is tripled against minions, so it is good wave clear, but remember that you would basically have to use it immediately, after a trade or a fight. And projectiles are destroyed if they hit terrain, so that is one way that people can dodge this living artillery, just by hiding behind any type of natural or created terrain. And so this is an intentionally crazy rapid-fire, quote-unquote auto attacks, even though it's really a projectile that can be dodged by getting out of the way or by getting behind terrain, as a reward for skillful use of his other skills, allowing him to become an absolute beast after 6, but only while he's recently accumulated stacks. There's timing windows to when you really don't want to get in his face, and when you do. Oh, part of the reason I added the extra minion damage, not so much to make it such good wave clear, but also to mean that people will find little refuge in hiding behind waves, so you can just fire at them, clear the wave real quick, and then hit them. And then anything else that was important on the notes? Yeah. So the ideal thing, if you're Cog's opponent and he's gotten more than like 4 or 5 stacks, is probably to just back off for a few seconds, let the stacks disappear, and remember they'll fall off pretty quickly once he's out of combat.
Out of combat with champions?
Yes, out of combat with champions. If he starts attacking monsters or minions, that does not hold nor reset the timer. That's correct.
So he cannot gain stacks during like Baron or Dragon, only with champions.
Only if he hits a champion, right? Actually, I think that I said okay, so I think that he does gain stacks on one of his abilities.
His
Was it
Q.
the Q? When he hits an epic monster. So that would allow him, yes, to hold the stacks. Besides that, he would need to be in combat with champions to hold the stacks while he's not gaining new ones. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if you find one of that problematic, like that's something that I think would be easily changed.
All right.
Yeah, and this will give him certain windows where he's hit a few consecutive skills well in fights. Remember that the cooldowns on all of his skills are pretty long, so you can't just hit a Q, miss everything, and then hit another Q until very late in the game to keep getting stacks. So if he's hit consecutive skills, this will actually give him a short window in which he would be a good duelist. At least against tanks or relatively immobile ADCs. Maybe not against an assassin. And yeah, so all of his other skills are kind of combining to create these stacks and give him that window where he can just be a minigun with really powerful projectiles, just flinging them at like 4 per second while he slowly runs at you.
Well, I have about 3 or 4 comments about this.
Okay.
First off, it seems extremely similar to Lucian's The Culling's ultimate. It's way more
Yeah.
interesting, I would say, than his, particularly because yours can slow, which makes it way more devastating. I've played a shitload of Lucian and Misfortune, whose ultimates are kind of similar to what you have here, and both of those, the scaling is way more powerful than what you have here. And so you got to take that into note. Just because you can fire a shitload doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be as devastating as Lucian's and Misfortunes, which I think are probably a good indicator of how much overall damage an ultimate that hits many times has to be effective. And yours is a lot lower than both of their per wave, per shot kind of damage mechanics, because theirs adds up to like thousands of bonus attack stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, I mean over if you can actually get, 10 plus stacks, maybe you've noticed already that part of what I've done in this kit is to actually encourage him to build some AD and not just be a pure on-hit champion now that we have so many of those in the game.
Well, I don't think that's ever been outside of his wheelhouse. His W's always been strong enough for him to still build full crit if he wants to.
Yes, but it's usually full crit along with attack speed rather than AD, excuse me, because of that percent health magic damage that also comes on his W. At least that's how I've seen him.
Well, I've always felt there's nothing to disincentivize him from not doing anything to increase his on-hit attack potential or buff his W further, because his W's, I just think his W is powerful enough, and the built-in attack speed from his Q
Talking about his current W.
yeah, still complement a full AD style, I think.
Yeah, I've just always felt that that because he already has this on-hit steroid in his kit, and it's like what we were talking about with being a tank buster before, that usually it's attack speed that Kog'Maw wants to go, in addition to possibly crit, rather than pure AD. And I didn't want to at least push him, or at least encourage and possibly reward building some AD in addition to other things that you might be building on hit with him here. And that's why I gave him AD ratios on a couple of his abilities and a bonus AD ratio on this one. So yeah, it's probably, especially early on in the game, not going to be as impactful as like a Lucian or a Misfortune ult most of the time. But it does give him better ways to track someone down who's kind of sidestepping it.
Well, this seems to be much in line with those kind of both of those ultimates. And as soon as you get to level 6 on Misfortune or Lucian, the ultimate tends to have 100 to 0 potential if you get hit by the whole thing. 2 more things that seem problematic. Now, I don't see it addressed here, You kind of hinted at it, but I don't see it kind of here. You know where how Lucian, he can shoot it, and the direction he's shooting isn't necessarily the direction he's facing. Like he can move forward and backwards and still be shooting in a static direction.
That
Does that
that is
function the
correct.
same way as this?
No, he is going. Kog'Maw will have to will have to actually turn and move in the direction that he wants to fire.
Okay, so that means he can't actually shoot this while running away. Because
That
he
is
would.
correct. That is
Okay.
correct. He'd be firing, at no one.
Okay. And then the second most problematic thing I think of this is there doesn't seem to really be any immediate reward the second you put a point into this skill if you haven't already been in a fight for like several seconds. Is that correct? Or did I miss somewhere where this ability automatically starts with several stacks if you like just put a point into it?
Well, you're gonna have to put a point into this ability to use it.
Okay. But it would be correct to assume as soon as you hit level 6, this ability doesn't do anything?
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to activate this the second you reached level 6, unless. Oh, are you saying, if you were level 5 and you hit some skills and then you became 6, would you be able to immediately use this skill?
I'm saying like
Yes, you can.
if you already started getting the stacks before you got the level 6 level up.
And as long as the stacks didn't fall off, yes, you would be able to use this skill. Kog'Maw can gain his stacks at any level. He just can't actually redeem them until level 6. And
Alright.
remember that they will fall off, yeah.
I didn't see that on here.
Yeah, I wasn't something that I thought that needed to be clarified, but you're right, it probably does. So yeah, he can gain them at any level. He can't gain the stacks for takedowns at any level. That is 6, 11, and 16. But as far as for hitting his skills, yeah, he gains the stacks, and then as long as he's still holding them when he reaches level 6, he could, if he wanted to, immediately, start rapid firing.
Alright, well I really like this, and even though it does less a damage per instance of damage of compared to the culling or bullet time,
Hmm.
I think the slowing effect probably more than makes up for it, considering Jin has the next closest thing and he only fires 4 times. Even though his slows, this would probably be way more powerful than that. You know.
Okay. So you're thinking this is like sneakily powerful. I meant it to be overtly powerful, and just the fact that you can get like 4 or 5 autos every second. Um,
Well, if it can,
if you already, yep.
according to this, it can fire 10 times a second.
Um, if you have 4 attack speed, it could. I think attack speed is capped at 2.5 in League of Legends.
I mean, you set up here at the top, it has a 0.1 second cooldown.
Oh, so that's for actually like choosing to fire it. Like once you've removed your
Oh,
finger from the R
okay,
button, if you still have stacks, you can use it again 0.1 second later.
okay,
You actually hold this down. You don't need to like mash your finger like an Evelyn Q or anything like that.
okay. I wasn't sure
Oh,
if that
okay.
governed the attack speed plus this
Yeah.
modifier too.
No, no, no. The only thing that governs the attack speed is your own attack speed and rank. You just hold the R button down and he'll fire as quick as he can until you run out of stacks or until you let that R button go.
Yeah, I feel like this would be a lot kind of like Caitlyn. It'd be a good finisher kind of ability,
Uh-huh.
whereas Lucian's and Misfortunes tend to be kind of an opener or like kind of a middle of the fight thing. This definitely seems like a lot more of a closer, because obviously you're going to want to bust it when you have the most stacks, right? You know.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and then the slow I definitely think is probably the most important part of this. Just the fact that it can slow at all is
yeah.
probably redonkulous.
Even the slight amount you think makes it a huge thing. Yeah, I mean this is still something where enemies, especially if they're not on your W, could dash away, and it would be another fraction of a second before you would hit them again. Or if they can get behind terrain. But if they can't, yeah, the slow is there to make it a little bit easier to hit them. Remember that you yourself are also slowed while you're using this.
Yep.
All right.
Well, I actually think this is perfectly balanced ability, particularly because one champion can intercept things from another champion, unlike Misfortune's ultimate. And
Yeah.
just like Lucian's ultimate, one person can intercept the projectiles for another person.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of those types of abilities, like the Lucian ultimate, like the Caitlyn ultimate, to some extent the Akshan ultimate, where teammates can step in and take the hit for you. It's always really fun to watch two teammates who are both really loving, like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? But yeah, I've always liked those types of abilities, and this would be one of them.
All right.
All right. So should we move back up to the passive?
Okay, this ought to be good. Let's have it. I see.
Yeah, I'm really glad that people can see the video because I did do a mock-up of how this tech tree-like thing would look. So this passive is called Adaptive Body. Um, it's inspired a little bit by some of the strategy games that we play. But the way this works is whenever Kog'Maw earns takedowns on enemy champions, so kills or assists, he earns permanent mutations that grant him bonuses while fighting against that specific champion only. Takedowns on enemies that have bounties on them, even if you don't earn the bounty yourself, earn one extra mutation per 200 gold of bounty paid. So if there's a 450 gold bounty, you would get the first mutation plus two bonus ones for the bounty. Each archetype, and basically the mutations, you're going to, while you're in the fountain, you're going to select from this like tech tree pyramid, which I don't know if Chrissy is showing you right now.
Not yet.
You're going to basically select from this pyramid one of these. You're going to quote unquote buy it with your mutation credits, and then you'll have that for the rest of the game against that one champion. Each archetype of champion, so for example, vanguards, for example, assassins, for example, juggernauts. There's maybe like a dozen different archetypes in the game. Enchanters, marksmen. Each archetype of champion will have a different pyramid of mutations. There will be about 10 to 12 different pyramids for different types of champs that Kog'Maw will be able to use against that champion. And then I guess a couple slightly important, just technical notes. In ARAM, you don't need to be in the fountain. You can select them at any time. But also in ARAM, since there's so many takedowns going around, you need 2 takedowns or 200 gold bounties for 1 credit. And enemy champions will be able to see what mutation you've chosen against them. I don't know if you'll put that as icons or as symbols on the HP bar, but give them some way to know. And yeah, if you want to go down to the picture of the pyramid, there will be 5 different options at any point where you can always buy those 5 mutations against an enemy champion. And then as you buy the ones on the bottom, the ones that are adjacent on top of it will also unlock. As you buy one from the 2nd level, not only will the other adjacent ones on the 2nd level, but also the adjacent ones on the 3rd level will unlock. And ideally, you want to get 5 takedowns on a champion and get up to the 5th level because there's a big bonus there. But once you unlock that 5th level, once you actually choose to spend a credit there, you can't upgrade any further on the pyramid against that champion. So this is pretty complex, I will admit, but I think it brings a lot of cool options. I did make one example tree against like one type of champion. Like the archetype that I chose here was Vanguards, which are tanky CC champions. People like Ornn, Leona, Braum tend to be Vanguards, I would say. So just as examples, and I would tend to put kind of like very specialized stuff near the 2 ends of the pyramid, and then more general stuff in the middle. So for tier 1, from left to right, I have auto attacks ignore 10% of the champion's armor that you're hitting. Second one, Orc Cloud, has a 30% cooldown reduction when you hit that champ. 7 damage on hit against that champ. 10 movement speed when you're running away from that champion, and then 15% tenacity against that champ. So these are things that would tend to be useful against vanguards that are trying to lock you down or are very tanky. Tier 2, I've got Kog'Maw's damage ignores that champion's shields and temporary resistances. So for example, if you're hitting their shield, Or if you're hitting them and they're shielded, it won't damage the shield, it'll just damage their HP. Biomissile slows that champion by 30% for 1.5 seconds. Plus 15 movement speed when you're running towards that champ to try and run them down for a kill. And then finally, take 20% damage. Take 20% less damage while you're immobilized by that champion. So if one of that champion's CC skills immobilizes you, you take less damage for a couple seconds.
I just like to say I have something like this too.
No.
For
Okay, you're just joking me now.
No, yours is a bit more over the top.
Wow. But it is similar. Damn.
It's a bit more. Mine's a bit more realistic. Yours looks like something out of a featured game mode.
I mean, it's a lot of work, but I think this is like a realistic thing that he could have in the game. Anyway, tier 3, give him a spell vamp against that particular champion when he's hitting them. Plus 30% attack speed for 1 second after he hits that champ with either autos or his ult. And then Field of Flora, the champ's ability, so this specific champ that you've chosen, their ability to turn is reduced even further. Tier 4, 20% of the pre-mitigation damage against that champ is redirected to their nearest ally. So them being there could actually get their ally killed. And summoner spells with less than a 20-second cooldown remaining can be used after you've taken damage from this specific champion that you've mutated against. And then finally, tier 5 will be the same against all types of champions. But you still need to actually get the tier 5 against each champion to get the effect when you're battling that champion. And what this is it's 20 damage on hit against that champ. Living Artillery deals 50% more damage to that champion, and the Living Artillery will refund half of a Living Artillery stack when you hit that champ. So if you're continually hitting that champ, and you've gotten a tier 5 upgrade against them, you'll get even more stacks as you're hitting them, and you can keep it running even longer. So, what is this supposed to do? This is supposed to just kind of lean hard into Kog'Maw's unique bioweapon capabilities. And specifically for gameplay, it will allow him to be a late-game scaler without requiring the team to necessarily build supportively around him. He'll be able to essentially create some of these utilities himself. If he does successfully get these mutations, particularly against the champs that are way ahead, maybe a 9-1 enemy Fiora or something like that with the bounties, Kog'Maw will be in a unique position to be able to lead his team in a comeback against the champ where just one enemy went all the way off the rails because your laner fed them.
Okay, I got a few questions.
Yes, sir. It's understandable with this 2-page passive.
First off, that 20% pre-mitigation thing, that is ridiculously strong. That's preposterous, man.
Okay, so it's 20% less against the one that you're hitting, and then that 20% is redirected to the nearest ally. It's kind of an anti-Knight's Vow. It's not 20% extra damage.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. It's still strong,
okay.
I think.
You still think it's too strong. Yeah, that's why I had it in tier 4. I think it's fair because you need 4 takedowns against that Vanguard before you can even think about being able to use that.
And then,
but yeah, if you think it's too strong, I mean, it could be 15%, 10%, whatever.
One more thing, just for clarity's sake.
Mm-hmm.
The beginning of this, when you were telling me about this bounty and all the crazy shit, this is confusing. Now, he can potentially get 25 of these, a full set for each enemy champion in the game if he kills them 5 times?
You could, if you didn't beeline it to level 5, you could even have more than 5 mutations. If you took like a level 1, 2, and then another level 2, and then another level 1, you could theoretically have infinite, or not infinite, up to 15 if you somehow had 15 takedowns against that one champion.
I'm confused.
Yeah.
Is he able to have a set of mutations against just one person he focuses on, or does he have a different set of mutations against every single champ in the game if he manages to kill them enough times?
Okay. So, every time you buy a mutation, it is only effective against that champ. For example, like when I say like in tier 2, Biomissile slows that champion by 30% for 1.5 seconds. that is only against this particular champion that you bought the mutation against for Biomissile, right? You can still hit another champion with Biomissile, but it won't slow them.
So yes, he can have sets of mutations against every champion on the enemy team if he kills them enough times.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I gotta be honest, Jason. This is fucking crazy.
Go on.
You've turned him into a Philios, man. This is too crazy. I was really on board with this until this passive, man. You went too far.
You don't like this passive? You don't like your strategy game tech trees?
You were playing too much Arena or whatever game mode that
look at Europa Universalis, and there's like a 412, stage tech tree that you have to unlock to get anything.
I don't think you can compare
now
that
you're
game.
complaining about this?
You can't compare a league to Europa. That's crazy.
I agree. This is not something I would want to see on every champ. So you would not want to see this on Cog? Okay.
If this was something that you only targeted at one person in the game, and if at some point you could switch the
So you're saying you would like it to be almost like an anathema's, whatever the second word of that item is called. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, the chains.
Yeah, the anathema's chain. You would like it to have a similar type of mechanic to that, where you basically build one pyramid rather than a separate one against each champ.
Yes.
And you choose at any point which one you're hitting them with. That would actually get a lot of the same things done that this does.
Think of the stress you're putting on like the UI with all this crazy shit, man.
It's not really that much of a stress. First of all, I could program it in 20 minutes.
I can't believe I'm making this argument, but the barrier for entry for this type of thing is a little crazy too, man.
It would be one of the more complex champs, right? Like, it still wouldn't be Viego level. But it would turn him into one of the more, complex champs where you would want game mastery and, basically champion knowledge.
What I think would make this work is you need to cut out probably about half of all of these buffs and tiers and basically just put everything in one tier and then just as you go through the game, it kind of be like Gangplank where you just choose what you want to keep for the rest of the game or like as an enhancement on top of all of your other shit. And that can either just apply to everything, so all of it needs to be a little weaker. Obviously, you can't just take 10% spell vamp versus everyone. That's pretty damn strong. Then I think this would be a lot more approachable. This is way too much, has way too much potential.
I see. You're just jealous of the effort that I put in.
No, I really admire the effort because it's clear you went back and watched those 3 videos we made before this and listened to my 3 designs over and over and over again to come to this level of innovation. I am proud of you.
I love the self-promotion there.
Because
you've more naked than that.
You've never been this adventurous and innovative in a way that actually felt like all the abilities went together before.
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely didn't feel like I needed to be this this wacky or innovative on the other champs because I felt like some of the things they already had going really worked, or didn't work and could work.
That's why
I felt like there were easier fixes there.
That's why I had like the most negative opinion on your Trendemir because he's definitely way more problematic than Kog'Maw is.
All right, we're not bringing that up anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. So you would actually like this to be simplified to either a 3-layer pyramid or just like 6 items, and you just choose them freely rather than by tier. The one reason I didn't, and I actually did think about having just one pyramid that you could have against all champions, rather than an individual for each archetype, was that a lot of the things you would pick on that pyramid, essentially would not be really useful against certain types of champions, right? 15% tenacity against a champion that doesn't have CC isn't going to be useful.
You see, my counter to that would be, and I'm picturing this in the UI, not the shop, like Gangplank, Silver Serpent upgrades. I'm picturing this on the UI at the bottom, and I'm thinking like to make this work, I think really well. I think not only would have to be takedowns, I think you would actually should only be able to access these mutagens or whatever the hell you called it on champion kills, and I think there should be 10 of them. And I think something that's garbage in a current game like extra tenacity, you could just
Uh-huh.
leave that for your 10th kill and take the juicier stuff that's more applicable early on in your first 3 kills to help you snowball like the laning phase or something. I think they should all be like accessible right away. And naturally that
Mhm.
would mean you'd have to tone down the power on a lot of these to uh,
Correct.
make them all
And
like.
they'd also mean that you could get some really big bonuses in the early game. If you get 2 or 3 kills.
I'm fine with that compared to
Uh-huh.
how vulnerable Kog'Maw would still be even with this much better kit.
Yeah, depending on what you picked. Maybe if you picked defensive ones, he wouldn't be that vulnerable, especially with, some of the kiting that I gave him. But yeah, like if I were in like the lead designer position, I would still want to try something like this, complex as it may be, and see if it could work. See if it would not only be, enjoyable and understandable, but whether it would, be fair to be able to get that much of an advantage against one particular champion. I honestly think it could be. But I do hear your points. Like, this is complex. This can go crazy if he has a lot of kills against a lot of different champions. And you'd have to balance 15 different, or not even 15, probably 40 or 50, when you consider that there's only going to be some overlap between archetypes. You'd have to balance a lot of different upgrades in the game.
Not to
So yeah.
mention, people would actually have to have like one clue in hell what the hell kind of subtype like each champion in the game is, which nobody knows. Even I don't know any of
Well,
that
I mean,
shit.
you just there would just be like a window, almost like Nico, where she chooses which champion to turn into. You would just click that champion. It would open up a little pyramid. Remember that you're in the fountain, so it's not like you have to do this in the middle of a team fight or something. And if you've never played Kog'Maw before, yeah, you'll have to hover over everything. But if you've played 5 games on the champ, you should, at least, with a quick hover, see, oh yeah, I want that or I don't. Um, I don't think it's as you know, terribly complex as you seem to think it is. But I agree, it would make him one of the more complex champs in the game. Um, so yeah,
It's
that's
not
what I've
so
got from
much.
my
It's
rework.
it's not so much that it's complex. It's just it's a lot for a passive. You know.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, so with what sounds like a lot of good and a lot of bad reaction from you, where are you on this overall?
Well, any of my bad takes were more concerned on the power level of this, that, and the other.
Hmm.
I'm actually extremely pleased with what you got here, and I don't remember what I gave. What did I give your Trinamir, a 3.5 or a 4?
I don't remember either. Let's not talk about it.
Well, I'm glad we can agree that that one was garbage. I don't remember. What did I think your Malphite was the best one? I think.
Yeah, you gave yeah.
All right, I don't remember what I. We should keep track of this. What did I give Malphite? Like a 5?
Okay, you gave Blitzcrank a 4, I think. You gave Malphite a 7.5,
What?
and yeah, you said it was really good, and you would have liked it a lot more if I didn't give him Magic Resist. And I think you gave the Tryndamere a 3.5.
I gave your Malphite a 7.5.
Give it a 7.5, and honestly, even that was underrated. That was a pretty damn good rework.
Well, in that case, I'm retroactively changing that 7.5 to a 6 because
You're
I
an
don't
asshole.
remember that one jumping out at me. I do remember it was by far the best of them up to that point. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Anyway, up to now, I will inflate your ego. I will give this one a 9 out of 10 with
Oh,
my badass seal of approval.
thank you, Chrissy.
And I think this would be like 9.5 or almost 10 out of 10 legendary status if this passive was way more humble and consumable. I think
Okay, so you think that like the idea is feasible? Is just way too much.
it is way too much. My only gripes for pretty much all of this kit are just concerns over power level, and that is not a gripe in terms of design to have gripes over the power of the abilities.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's like I always try to think about like the numbers and compare them to other skills in the game, but it's hard to come up with those without having a little bit of playtesting. As a game designer, like the single most important thing, not only for balancing, but also for playability, is just putting the game in front of people, creating some type of prototype and seeing people play it, seeing what they do without talking to them at all. And obviously, we can't do that for something like League. That would be tremendously difficult and would take years of my life to program in, like a platform that we could do that on. But but yeah, I try to get close with the numbers. I understand that I'm not always going to hit them, and I really appreciate that you like the design here.
Yeah, so definitely a 9 out of 10. It can't get an 8 because too many of what you came up with, I came up with the same stuff, so I can't give my own one a low rating because that wouldn't make
Okay.
any sense.
So now that you've buttered me up and said that you and I are not that dissimilar, I'm really interested to hear yours.
I do
I
think
want to
it's
hear where you
pretty
put this.
shocking how many similar things we came up with.
It is. I thought this was going to be the one where we're going to be like the most different of every single champion.
So maybe we agree way more where 80 carries should be than tanks and fighters.
Perhaps. Or maybe we were just, in that synchronicity. Guess we'll find out.
Do you, I'm really blown away by the order of magnitude between this one and your first three in terms of how well the abilities go together, synergize, and feel like a cohesive theme that's something I would want to see in the game.
Yeah, you seem to be a big fan of like champions that one thing stacks another, um, or is like a very obvious combo setup. There are a lot of champions that I think are good. For example, I think Ari, the Q, the W in particular, don't seem to have a lot of interaction with each other or the other skills. Where I still think that it creates a cohesive and enjoyable kit.
I don't think a
Um,
good champ has to have abilities that naturally
mhm.
are like obvious that they like one buffs another. I think
Yeah.
I think this particular kit just feels like it all complements each other very well.
Yeah, and I promise you, I was trying on those first three. I think very much with maybe if you go back to the Malphite video, you'll see that it was more like cohesively tight than you're thinking of right now. But even on like ones like Blitzcrank, for example, I promise you, I was thinking of the ways that the skills would be used together in different combinations, and maybe I missed the mark. Maybe you just didn't see how they were fitting, or maybe I didn't explain it well.
No,
Or
man. There's
yeah.
a reason why I asked you like 10 times more questions about in this one than in the last three you did. This one was way more engaging and closer to what I could see in the game, man.
Yeah, maybe I just hit the mark more on this one. And anyway, appreciate the compliments. So we don't bore people with our mutual admiration, why don't you tell me about your kit?
Okay, let me close that masterpiece and bring up mine.
It's a regular void splatting Mona Lisa.
What was the name of your ultimate? Was still Living Artillery, right?
It was.
Okay. Good job on all the names.
Thank you, sir. One,
Okay.
go ahead.
Now we're on to mine, and we're going to hear a lot of familiar things with yours. I too dipped heavily into like the biological side of things and his element of him being some void acid monster kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a fun theme.
I was surprised that you would actually go in that direction, as heavy maybe or even heavier than I did. I actually didn't think you would diagnose that that was his theme. I thought you would come up with something way more foreign than what I came up with. Anyway, all right, on to my Kog'Maw. First up, and this is kind of it's kind of similar to your passive, but mine kind of plays into the rest of the kit. I have changed. Acathian Surprise is still his passive, and you were telling me how much you hated that and whatever, and I was like, oh. But
Yeah, again, I don't hate it. I just don't think it belongs on an ADC who you're supposed to protect. But go on.
my argument kind of was that he's still like a void monster who has like some unstable ass or whatever, so he blows up after he dies. I was kind of cool with the kamikaze effect or whatever of that, so
Mm-hmm.
I think that was too iconic to remove from his kit.
Okay.
And while that isn't the only thing, that is still like a secondary part of his passive. I did give him a new primary aspect of his passive that kind of supersedes that, because this thing kind of works its way into the rest of his kit. And my new passive is called Chemical Composition.
Okay.
Hold on, let me sit up for this, because now I gotta be serious.
Okay, so you're on the train of two different passes with two different names.
Well,
I never liked that.
no, there's a lot. I mean, in like the last several years, you'll see like
They've done that with several champs, yeah.
there'll be an overall ability name, and then each passive will have its own name. You know.
Mm-hmm. I've never liked that, but they do that, so I'm not holding it against you.
In this day and age, everything's got 12 passives.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so chemical composition, get used to hearing that because this is a big deal. So how this works is every 60 seconds, or on champion or epic monster takedown, or upon triggering a Cathian surprise, so dying, Kog'Maw can change the properties of his own body, so just like your adaptive thingamabob, whatever it was called.
Mm-hmm.
And the way this is represented is a lot like Kha'Zix evolved. When Kha'Zix gets a point in his ultimate, he evolves. And what that does, if you played Kha'Zix, it brings up a secondary menu above his Q, W, and E for which ability he wants to evolve. Mm-hmm. So that's the precedent that I'm going with here. And what's happened here is there's a red, a blue, and a purple. Each one is a different chemical composition. Now, red is called volatile formation. That one specializes in burst. Blue is structural adherent. That one's CC. And purple is energized framework. That's DPS and sustain. And every time his passive triggers, he can choose, and basically you use the same hotkeys to change this as you would by leveling up. So it'll never be like an imposition for you to go down there and click on his next chemical composition. It'll just be like you're leveling up, like I said, Kha'Zix's thing.
Okay.
And now we go to a Cathian Surprise. It still works exactly the way it used to, except it has a different effect, or it's modified based on his current chemical composition. For red, which is burst, now it does 10 to 25% missing health true damage. So this is going to be weaker than it currently is right now early on, but it is going to hit like a truck in the late game. And I always thought that Kog'Maw's passive was very underwhelming in the late game. So this will give it some absolute serious threat in the late game if he happens to switch to volatile formation when he dies.
Mm-hmm.
And then if he's in structural adherent, he gains 50% bonus movement speed while he's in his death.
So it's easier to hit?
Yes, and it lasts for 3 seconds longer. Right now it lasts for 4 seconds, so this will jump it to 7. And it leaves a trail that slows for 50% for 1 second. Think Singe's Q for that, same kind of mechanic. And when he detonates, it roots everyone in the vicinity a 300 AoE for 2.5 seconds, but this removes the damage component entirely.
Okay. I don't know that you need 7 seconds before it actually manages to... so does the trail still do damage?
No, the trail only slows, and the reason it has a longer duration.
So it's less about the explosion and more about the trail. I see.
Well, they're both super useful, but the way... If you're like helping an ally after you die, you can keep the enemy basically permaslowed by like humping their model with this for a longer period of time until they get CC'd by the eventual explosion, which can be a really big asset if you die, but there happens to be another carry on your team alive at the time.
I think 4 seconds would be enough on it, particularly because you probably want that root after 4 seconds if your teammate is still in combat.
Yeah.
All right. Tell us about the DPS sustained version of this.
Okay, this is energized framework. That's purple.
Mm-hmm.
This one does still do damage, but it's only 50 to 200 based on level, so it's pretty pathetic. That's not the point, though. It does do a little bit, but not much. This, he bloats up kind of over time during the 4 second, and when he blows up, he leaves behind a large leaking corpse that heals allies in the area by 2.5 times his total AD and 100% of his AP over 4 seconds. So think of kind of like Janus Monsoon, but a little smaller and centered on his corpse.
Do you think we'd ever have like a suicide support Kog'Maw?
Not with the numbers I gave this. Originally, I had the numbers a little bigger, and then I was thinking, wait a minute, that's so much stronger than Janna's ultimate. People are just going to blow themselves up for no reason.
You just go straight into 5 guys to try to set up the fight.
But now I made this about as reasonable as like Fiora's ultimate, which is just strong enough but not broken. Kind of that same idea.
Okay. Now when you said evolving the QWE, you were just referring to like it's a similar interface to when Kha'Zix evolved it, or are you actually evolving Kog'Maw's skills?
Okay, well here's the thing. Chemical composition only changes the effect of his Q, which I haven't gotten to, and then the rest of his kit, it only adds a bonus effect based on his chemical composition.
Okay, and this is something that you use every 60 seconds or when he gets a takedown or goes into a Cathian surprise. It's not something that you can permanently upgrade in any way throughout the game, right?
No, there's no upgrades, but when I get to his Q, you'll see how his passive has more versatility.
Okay, so I think I understand this. And just one question, when you're in the... when you go into a Cathian surprise, you said that that is a trigger in which you can change his chemical composition.
Yes, as soon as he dies, the menu will come up for you to decide which death.
How long do you have to decide that? Because it would be kind of... Well, how long do you have to decide that?
You know, I actually didn't think about that, but yeah, I guess you should only have like a 2-second window to...
Yeah, I was going to say 1 second even, because it just seems very unfair to... to like run up to someone they think they're going to be rude and then boom, true damage, or vice versa.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, it should probably be like a 1 or 2 second window.
Yep.
That's a very good thing you pointed out. I'm actually embarrassed that slipped my mind because I'm pretty good about the details like that. You're right. Okay. It would not be fair to juke and jive someone about which one you were going to pick.
Yeah, especially if there was like an extended amount of time on one of them, where at the 7th second you just turned it to something else.
Let's say 2 seconds. 1's too fast.
Yeah, I would even say 1, just because like the worst thing that could happen is you miss it and you still get whatever effect you get from whatever composition you had. But even like 1.5, 2, I could see the world where that's okay.
Well, one thing that I haven't mentioned yet is when you choose a chemical composition, that's what you're in until you change it again. So what it could is you could just default to that one if you don't make a choice in 1 second.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like you have that form already. So that's the worst thing that could happen, and it's not that bad.
Okay.
As much as I would probably rather have a suicide passive off of this champ, you have definitely made it cooler and better than it is now.
Oh, that's not hard.
Yeah, and I like the chemical composition a lot so far, what you've done with it, or what you're describing. Just even for the thematics, I think the idea of like this creature that is like, barely an animal form that is also always in flux in terms of its like appearance. I'm just imagining Kog'Maw having like 3 different particle effects. This is going to be hell on the artist for every skin. But that aside, like I think it would be so cool to look at. I would love to see a champ like that in the game.
That is exactly the visuals I was going for with this.
Yeah, I mean, I can just from the way you described it, I can picture it, I can imagine it, and I love it. So far so good, except for the artists.
Okay, next up is his Q, and this is the most consequential with chemical composition because your current chemical composition directly change what your Q actually is, while as I mentioned earlier, his other abilities are simply buffed by what you pick. All right, so the Q is called Reconstitution.
Okay.
And this has a 36 to 20 second cooldown. So it's pretty long, and the mana cost is variable depending on which chemical composition you choose. And what this does simply is it instantly readies chemical composition, his passive, and it changes Kog'Maw's next 3 attacks based on his chemical composition. And
Okay,
red,
so it lets you immediately choose your form, and then sorry, what did you say that the second part was?
it changes Kog'Maw's next 3 attacks based on his chemical
Auto attack.
composition.
Got it.
First up is volatile formation, the red one. All of these are going to go red, blue, purple.
Okay.
And red one is living artillery, so I kept that one in there just like you.
Hey.
My ultimate's different, but this is the throwback to living artillery. This is his red choice of his Q. All this does is it fires down 3 projectiles, and it has a stock system. And each of them do 100 to 300 damage, plus half his AD and 60% of his AP. Has a huge mana cost for an AD carry of 100, but it's really strong in the early game with those base numbers. And other than that, it has the same size, speed, hitbox, and range of rank 1 living artillery as it exists right now in Kog'Maw's kit. So functionally, it'll exist the same as rank 1, which is good range, but not criminally abusive like rank 2 and 3.
Right.
And then the kicker is he has to fire all 3 of the stocks, because during that duration, he's considered disarmed until all of his charges are expended.
Oh, okay. And what is the cooldown between each one? Is it like the ultimate now, or is it shorter?
It's the same characteristics of his occupant now, so it's a 1 second cooldown.
So it's as if he went 40, 180, 40, 80, 120, or 160 or whatever, yeah.
What?
It's as if he fired 3 immediate projectiles at the doubling mana cost right now.
Okay.
It's the same type of mechanics and cooldowns as that.
What I have here is that it's a 1 second internal cooldown like his current ultimate.
Okay, so he's not going to be disarmed that long, but he's never going to want to use this if he thinks he's about to be in a duel or something like that.
Correct. This is kind of a laning phase tool, and it kind of doesn't scale super well after the laning phase.
Yeah, although it can always be used for the snipes.
Yeah, correct.
Cool.
Doesn't do bonus damage based on missing health like current one does, or yours.
It does not. Okay, so it's just the base plus the ratios.
That's why the base amount is way more powerful than the base numbers on the current one, because it doesn't have.
Remember, even at rank 5, I had mine at 90 base damage, because you're getting those ratios and the
quantity. Yeah.
Cool. All right. How about the W? Not the W. Sorry, the blue version.
Structural adherent. This is CC utility. This one's called Viscous Stream.
Okay.
Yeah, all of my names got goofy chemistry puns and stuff like that. All right, this one changes your Q into a line skill shot. Costs 50 mana. This one's cheaper. And this deals... So you get 3 of these, just like the other one. And this deals 5% max HP plus 150% total AD magic damage. So this one doesn't do a ton of damage. It's basically just a little tiny health shred and a little bit more than your total AD. And that's the point, because this goes through anything and it'll only stop on champion collision. So you can shoot this through the minion line. And a good way to visualize this ability, functionally it works just like Jinx's W.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and on collision,
that makes sense.
On champion collision, this slows for 25 to 75% for 3 seconds, and the way that scales is based on the amount of projectiles you get hit by. So if you only get hit by 1, it's a 25% for 3 seconds. If you get hit by all 3, it's 75% for 3 seconds. So it's really punishing if you get hit by 1, because then you'll probably get hit by all of them.
And that's in addition to 5% max HP on each hit.
Yes, so 15 total.
Yeah, I mean that's quite strong.
The scaling's not that great.
Is it like a very fast skill shot?
It's same as Jinx's W, so it's kind of fast, but not terribly hard to juke. It's not as long as Jinx's. It only has a range of 800, so a little bit over Caitlyn's.
Jinx's W is easy to juke only because there's like a 1 second or so warning, like where it's going before it actually hits.
Yeah, this won't have that.
Okay, so this will actually be very hard to juke if it's that fast.
Well, sometimes really fast skill shots are really easy to miss too.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Think of like Corky's missiles. It's actually kind of hard to hit people with those, even though they're pretty fast.
Although it's even harder to hit someone with a Morgana bind that's crawling along with all the speed of an enraged glacier.
Sometimes I think stuff like that's actually easier, not only because that's kind of a fatter skill shot, but
Uh-huh.
because it kind of has a certain delay to it. It almost makes it easier to hit in a way. I feel like
Some people walk into it.
some things that are so incredibly fast, I actually think are
Yeah.
somewhat harder to hit people with from time to
An
time.
interesting theory. There's no reason that should be the case, but I have noticed some of the same things, and I think it's just some people will walk into the slow ones.
Yeah, I
All
think you're
right.
right.
Yeah, without too much tangent, though, let's hear about the purple version of your queue.
Well, one thing I'd like to mention is just like the volatile formation one, this one
Yeah.
also disarms you until you expend all the charges.
Okay.
And just like the same one before, it also has a 1 second internal cooldown. So you can't just
hmm
go like bum 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 bum. It's like bum bum bum, you know?
Yep.
Okay, last one. This is alleviating slime.
Alleviating slime. Okay.
Yes. This one's the cheapest of all. It only costs 25 mana, and that's because this is his sustain ability.
Yeah.
So this is actually 3 auto attacks, whereas the first two were technically replaced his Q with like circular skill shots and line skill shots. This actually is 3 of his next enhanced auto attacks.
Right click the champion to use it.
Or minion monsters, yeah.
Sure.
Alright,
Okay.
the next 3 autos marks the target for up to 15 seconds, and they heal whoever damages them for 1% max HP plus 3 to 15 health over 2 seconds. Took some inspiration from Shen's old Q because it had a very similar effect to this.
Interesting.
This is kind of
So
like that the mastery that heals for the tanks take. I forget what it's called.
yeah,
It's the one
uh,
everyone used to abuse the Doom build.
Font of Life.
Yes, Font of Life, kind of like that, yeah.
hmm So is this will not only heal the first person who damages them, but everybody who heals them for a couple seconds. Everybody
Yep.
who damages them.
Yep, and this isn't just auto attacks. This is anyone who deals damage to someone who's marked with alleviating
Okay.
slime. And since
Okay.
this is can be fired 3 times, multiple marks will stack the effect for a total of 3% max HP to 9 to 45 health over 2 seconds. So it never
Okay, so
get
that's the maximum they'd be able to get 3% max HP plus the base amount.
yeah, but if you're continuing to do damage to someone, this will keep refreshing.
So how long would it last for? What is the longest this could last for?
15 seconds.
15 seconds?
Yeah, but if you're continuing
Of
to
continuous
damage
healing?
if you're continuing to damage someone, it's going to basically keep overlapping with itself. So it's not like you'll literally be getting like 45% of your max health back.
No, but it would be 5 times whatever the amounts you gave for, because it happens over 3 seconds.
2 seconds.
Okay, so 7.5 times that. Yeah, I think that's probably overly power. If it was just you that was getting that back, that would be fine. I think to give that to your whole team is overly powerful. Um, I would probably take down the duration in which it had effect for. I would basically make it where, or maybe just make it the first time that any ally damaged that champion during the next 15 seconds, they would get this for 2 to 3 seconds.
Well, I'm not finished yet. You might change your mind when you hear the rest of this.
Okay.
Also, this is a 60% weaker versus minions, and a target that dies with a mark will
Uh-huh.
heal the target that killed that thing for 4 times the current effect instantly. So
Wow.
this
So the
allows.
amount that they would have gotten over 8 seconds.
No, it's just each mark is only over a 2 second period.
Right. So you get basically 4 marks total worth of healing for the kill, right?
Yes, and if you do this on minions, it's a lot weaker. So this will help him sustain in lane, but it's drastically weaker against minions because obviously 80 carries with sustain is something you have to be very careful about.
Yeah. So is that's the cue?
Yep, that's the cue.
All right. It was a lot of words, but I think it would be like reasonably easy to understand as a Kog'Maw player. I like the idea of this a lot. I don't know if I like that it instantly readies the chem comp. You already have several different ways to ready it, and you're already getting it passively every 60 seconds.
Yeah,
Um,
but this also kind of has to be something he uses consistently in lane. And keep in mind, the Q is on a pretty high cooldown. It's 36 to 20 seconds.
right, which means that at most, even if you didn't give it the instantly ready, you'd only have to use this like once on a non-desired color before you use this again. That's my feeling on it. I think it would actually be better if it did. It would be more interesting, right? Because you'd have to think ahead. Not only what do I need right now as far as the three different quote unquote skills on the queue, but what will I need in 30 seconds from now? The next time this is up. So for that reason, personally, I would say I would rather have it not instantly ready chem comp. Um,
Well,
of the three, I think Living Artillery is my favorite. I think that one's beautiful. I think the Viscous Stream is also quite good. Maybe a little bit too strong compared to the Living Artillery, but still really cool.
the damage is
Um,
pretty low. It's
um,
more about the slow.
yeah, but 15% max HP in addition to the. You are also doing 100% AD on those, right? So,
Yeah, but that's just like an auto attack.
yeah. So it's basically 15% of their max HP as bonus damage, which, yeah, against like another squishy wouldn't be that much. Against a tank would be a lot. Um,
Slower than the
and then
scaling on Jinx's W.
I don't even know what the scaling on Jinx's W
It's
is.
like 160% of her AD.
Wow. Um, and then the alleviating slime, also a cool idea. Probably my least favorite of three, and then also, I think, very overpowered. I would look at ways to either take down the numbers or the number of times that you can use it on the E. In terms of the number of times you can proc the heal,
Yeah, you
but
might be right on that.
still a cool idea. Alternatively, because he is an ADC, and you're meaning this to be a lane sustain thing, possibly keep the numbers, but make it so that he only heals himself. Unless you're really meaning Cog to be a utility ADC in the vein of Senna or Ashe.
I hear you.
Yeah. So different ways you could go about weakening that part of it. But overall, I think an extremely cool ability, and I really like the first two parts of it.
I do think it's really important that his Q instantly readies his passive because I think only
Mm-hmm.
relying on his passive to refresh, I think
Uh-huh.
between it being a full minute or only getting it on takedowns or dying,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's way too exclusive to something that should be a laning phase, like trading pattern esque skill.
Yeah, so there's it seems like we're of two minds here, and I think they're both equally valid paradigms to look at this in. Yours is that like the player who's playing the Kog'Maw should be able to pull out whichever skill they want to use in the moment. It's almost like a twisted fate pick a card, right?
Well, keep in
Um,
mind he can only use this once per switch. So if he just stays in his current chemical composition, his Q no longer does anything. So he's incentivized to switch constantly.
what do you mean by that? You mean if he didn't switch in between, the Q would just be totally locked out?
Yeah, it only changes his next three auto attacks.
I feel like I'm not completely understanding what you mean by the once per switch.
He uses his Q, he
Hmm.
chooses a new chemical composition. His
Hmm.
next three autos are empowered or replaced to have
Yeah.
an effect three times, and then
Uh-huh.
his Q doesn't do anything until he gets another switch.
Well, the
That's
Q doesn't do anything until it comes basically off of cooldown anyway, right?
Well, his Q has a cooldown of 36 to 20 seconds, but you
Right.
can also time that so you can have your passive coming off cooldown and you do a chemical switch into a Q effect, and then you can
Oh, the
use
Q refreshes every time he changes his chemical composition? The Q's cooldown refreshes?
if his passive comes up, he gets
Uh-huh.
another effect on his Q because he's
So he gets
switching
3
chemical.
more enhanced auto attacks without the cooldown ever having come off on his Q.
Yes, because it's either Q or passive.
That's what I didn't
His
understand.
Q is
Okay,
just another way of getting a twofer in.
I
Because
see.
basically the downtime on his Q would be way too long for it to be like a laning phase tool otherwise.
Okay, so even at the 36-second cooldown, within that range of 36 seconds, it would be very possible, if you got one takedown, to use all 3 of these effects on 3 auto attacks each.
Uh,
That's
he can only use
yeah.
one at a time. You mean triggering
Yeah.
it 3 times?
Yeah, use his 3 reds, then his chemical composition 60-second hits, then he uses his 3 blues, then he gets a takedown and he uses his 3 purples.
Or you can just go red, blue. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
That's why I don't
Um
think they're horribly huge in terms of damage.
yeah, that feels overpowered to me, but it's always hard to tell because you are trading your ability to actually auto attack for this.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's a little hard to tell balance wise. See, I thought that how it worked was you would use your Q, you would get 3 of one type, and then you just had to wait for your Q to come back off cooldown before you get more enhanced autos. And in that paradigm, I was thinking it would be kind of cool to have to think ahead and say, okay, not only what do I need right now, but 30 seconds from now, next time my Q comes up, what form do I want to be on? And therefore, maybe I choose something different right now.
Well, I think considering he's a hyper carry, that I think it's more than balanced him not being able to auto while having to expend at least 2 of the 3.
Yeah, perhaps. And aside from the W, this is probably not something he would use in lane very much. Sorry, outside of lane very much. In the late game team fights is what I meant. I think
Oh
W is
no,
the only one that would. Yeah.
no, I think he would definitely want like the super consistent slow, and the heal will be strong later on in the game. I think it'll scale somewhat well. It'll never be that great. The Q is the thing that'll kind of fall off outside of the laning, or the living artillery is the one that'll
Yeah. I
fall off.
misspoke. When I said W, I meant the viscous stream is the one that I think would be almost exclusively used in the late game team fighting, or anything late game really.
Yeah, that's true. I
Yeah.
mean, that'll be the
But the
best
other,
one outside of the laning phase.
yeah. But the other 2 are landing phase design, and that's fine. Um, yeah, I like the skill.
Okay, those were probably the 2 most complicated things in this kit. So we got
Thank
those out
God.
of the way.
Yeah.
All right, the next is I kept Bio Arcane Barrage and Void Ooze because
I mean, you're cool names.
I think they were very salvageable, and I
Mhm.
simply added modifiers. These don't change based on its chemical composition. The existing effect just gets a buff, basically. So
Okay, so all of the mechanics and most of the cooldowns, whatever, are about the same.
The mechanics are I twiddled with the numbers a little bit.
Okay.
For Bio Arcane Barrage, now this is 75 mana, has a much
Mhm.
longer cooldown of 22 seconds, up from 17 or whatever it was, I think. But instead of lasting for 8 seconds, now it lasts for 12 seconds. And Kog'Maw gains 50 to 150 range, which is shorter than the one he currently gets. This is the baseline effect, mind you. This isn't any of the 3. And while he's active, this deals 25 magic damage plus 1 to 5% of the target's max HP. That is a fair bit weaker than the current baseline effect that it has now, but that's made up by this. And so it does 1 to 5% of the target's max HP magic damage, as well as a bonus effect based on the current chemical composition. So
Okay.
first up, we got Volatile Formation. This is the burst one. This locks him into kind of like a cannon type kind of thing. So it's a little similar to your ultimate.
That's
This
great.
locks his attack speed to 0.5, so 1 attack every 2 seconds, basically.
Oh, so you're having him locked to a slow rate. Okay, cool.
Yes, but it also adds, this is his burst one. This adds, while he's in this form, it'll give him 33% extra critical strike chance and a whopping 75% bonus critical strike multiplier, and an additional 125 range for a total of 175 to 275 bonus on top of his base of 500, which I did not change. So at max rank levels and all yada yada, this will give him a high point of 775 auto attack range when he's locked into this slow but very ouchy crits that he can pump out.
Okay.
So this will make him more of kind of like a safer backline when he's in this mode. And keep in mind, he can only stay in this mode for 12 seconds. During our Bio-Arcane Barrage. So
does he gain any attack speed in Bio-Arcane Barrage in general, or no?
Nope.
No.
Not in red, anyway. Well, not in any of them, actually.
Fair enough.
I didn't think he actually needed any other steroids, and the steroids that are in his kit right now are kind of honestly just laughable. He has like some small attack speed bonus, and that's it. Alright, next up is Structural Adherent. Each attack, on top of the base effects, which were still shared with the red one, the blue one does 25 extra magic damage on hit, and that scales with a tiny little bit, 10% of his AD and 20% of his AP, so basically like a built-in Nashor's. And it slows the target by 5% for 3 seconds, and that stacks up to 20 times. So this is kind of his Ash Q, or his Frost Shot, essentially, kind of thing. This will help him when he chooses to go into a switch and goes blue and then activates Bio-Arcane Barrage. This will be his big ticket kiting potential. But this can like basically hard stuck the opponent. But the thing is, when Bio-Arcane Barrage times out, this will clear all the stacks on all enemy champions.
Okay, but that could be up to 12 seconds.
Correct.
Okay.
But it starts off at only 5%, so you still got a few attacks before it gets pretty crazy.
Yeah, or you could just kill the Cog, although then he's going to come at you with his, crazy little Cathian surprise.
Yeah.
Okay. Purple form.
Next up, Energized Frameworks bonus is each attack will deal an additional 1% HP magic damage, but it also removes 0.5 to 2 armor and MR from the target for 5 seconds. And this stacks infinitely. As much as you can do it in 12 seconds, this will stack infinitely. So this this is kind of in line with the shred that you had on your Void Ooze, or whichever one it was. Also, Kog'Maw heals for 5% of any pre-mitigation damage dealt over this effect. And, just like his W, all stacks are cleared when Bio-Arcane Barrage times out. So, no one has, like, super reduced armor and MR for, like, a proactive period of time, only during his purple form on this.
Okay. And it'll be pretty obvious, I hope more obvious than the current Bio-Arcane Barrages, that he's used it and what form he's in.
Oh, yeah, there's a world of visual shenanigans they could do to emphasize this, and then put like 5 different kinds of debuff appearances on the enemy based on how many stacks that they have debuffed on. So yeah, there's all kinds of cool things they could do.
You could do some cool stuff with like glow or even glowing slime.
Yeah, so this scales at like 1, 6, 11, and 16 with like points in the ultimate. That's why it starts at 0.5 and then only goes up to 2. I think 2 is pretty strong for like each auto attack, so considering how much attack speed he could get in the late game.
Yeah. The one conceptual problem that I have, conceptual problem that I have with the way you've designed the 3 effects is that the red form, with its 2 second wind up.
2 second.
Is it a 2 second wind up? What? Well, you basically fire once every 2 seconds, right? With a 0.5 attack. No.
No, that's right.
Yeah. Would punish attack speed / on hit builds in general, whereas the other 2 forms, being on hit bonuses, would reward such builds.
That's the point. The point of the red one is more damage and a more safer playstyle, but obviously less DPS. That's why it's more bursty. And the other ones are obviously way more, stutter step, AD carry, stereotypical intensive.
Yeah.
So it
So
just gives
I
him
think
more options.
based on the way that you're actually building him that game, essentially either one of these or two of these are going to have very little utility as you
Uh,
get further into the game um, because it just doesn't reward what you built.
well, that's not really true. Even if you're building on hit,
Uh-huh.
the stats that this gives you and the safety of much more range are still going to be an asset from time to time. Having more
I
attack
don't.
range is
Yeah.
never not going to be, something that can be leveraged regardless of your build from time to time.
That is hard to leverage just because like you have to spend so much time in the attack animations.
Well, just because he has slower attack
Yeah.
speed doesn't mean he has to have an insanely
Doesn't mean
slow
he's spending
auto.
on 2 seconds there, but attack animations do scale with attack speed, I believe, the
Well,
way that everything is coded.
well, even if
Um,
that's true, he can have a
yeah,
modified attack animation that's very quick, even if he has a slower attack speed.
yeah, I would be quicker to say maybe you have his attack speed in that form, instead of giving him a fixed lock to 0.5. And then at least, whatever you've built attack speed throughout the game will be somewhat useful there. Even then, I think there's a slight conceptual issue there.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't really see that as a problem.
yeah, I mean, I honestly do.
This is the one that just gives you the most range, so it's like the more safer
Yeah,
play style.
and I hate to say that because I think red is the coolest idea of the three that you came up with here. Um, yeah, I think maybe you should thought a little bit more about just how it would interact with things you would actually build throughout the game, and make sure that the decision between red, blue, and yellow wasn't kind of made for you. I get that I said blue and yellow, blue and purple. Particularly blue and purple, I think there will be cases for each of them versus each other throughout the game.
Yeah, I
Um,
think there's definitely room for the red one because there's going to be times where your frontliners are in there and you don't want to commit super hard, so you bust out your longest range auto attacks that just happen to do way more critical strike damage, mind you, because this is like 3 times better than Infinity Edge.
Yeah,
Even
I mean, I think if I'm an on-hit Kog'Maw in general in a situation like that, I will just wait for a half of a second until the front line moves a little bit closer, and then start firing on them with
well,
purple.
see the thing is, in this day and age, I
Hmm.
I think a few years ago, I think you would have been right that it would have hurt on hit
Yeah,
Kog'Maw, but these days all the on hit items have AD on them already, so you can make a lot of use of the critical strike chance and extra critical strike multiplier. So just
that's
by
an
nature
interesting
of
argument,
going
Mac.
on hit, I don't think that's a big enough reason to think this is bad.
That's an interesting argument, Mac. And conversely, while you're really like if you're really building for the red and building no attack speed throughout the game,
That would be
because you're
cool.
trying to build what?
That would be awesome because if you get Infinity Edge, he would hit like a truck with this.
Oh, the red would be awesome. Then what I'm saying is there's no use ever for the yellow or the blue.
No, the blue will always be good because even with only a few stacks, you can kite. And you can always run lethal tempo, so it's not like blue or purple will ever be
Or you could
bad.
just blow them up in 3 hits with the red.
That's fine too.
Um,
That's I like the decision making of
yeah,
it.
I mean,
It keeps him from being static. I think that's the point, you know?
you make interesting arguments. I don't want to go too hard on what I think is a problem, but there's a possibility it might not be. Um, so overall, kind of cool. I really like what you do with the visual effects on this. And yeah, like BioArcane Barrage is definitely something that I think most people would say is a fine and cool part of Kog'Maw's kit. That unless you're doing like a heavy rework on them, there's no reason to take it out. So yeah, I think you did fine with this one.
Okay, next up is Void Ooze. This is the one I actually changed the least. It kind of just has the same trimmings, but just some cool little bonuses. Not as crazy as your Void Ooze or Fart or whatever your equivalent was called.
The Field of Flora, baby.
Yeah, that one. All right, so this has the same effect as it does now, plus an
Hmm.
additional effect based on its current chemical composition. Except I increased the cooldown to 16 seconds, and I gave it a whopping 120 mana cost because some of these are pretty impactful. but
Okay.
should be a more utility that he's currently getting out of this spell, so I really liked that one. First up, Volatile Formation. It just adds an AD ratio of 150% of his total AD, so that front loads a lot more damage if you just get hit by the wave right away. It'll do the magic damage component and add this on straight away as soon as you get hit by the wave. So
Wow.
think of like the wave kind of like, I don't know, some cool effect as soon as it goes out. So
I mean, this is an easy skill to hit. This is not something that really takes any skill. It just takes time.
yep.
Okay.
And then structural adherence bonus is
Mm-hmm.
the slow increased by 20%, and the width of Void Ooze also is increased by 20%, similar to how yours got wider too.
Yeah.
And units caught inside for more than 1 second are rooted for 1.5 seconds, so this will really synergize with the blue effect on his W and his Q to make him something of a kite machine.
Okay. Are you picturing like if if Kog'Maw were to use this on you, while you're kind of in the center of it, should it be possible walking at normal speed to get out of this? If you're just like specifically trying to get out of it.
I think if you're dead center, and keep
Uh-huh.
in mind ranks and Void Ooze increase the slow, so
Uh-huh.
it's kind of hard to give a blanket answer, but I would have to say with a 20% extra width in your dead center, I would say no, it would be hard to get out without a dash or a blink or something. But
Okay,
there's
so
a
that's a
lot of skills
very
in the
powerful utility skill.
game where just blanket walking won't like avoid the ability, like Aatrox's W, for instance.
Yep. Yeah, that's true.
That one has the same amount of damage as that one, just has the base damage like normal. And then Energized Framework, it removes this is another one that was like what you did. This removes the initial damage component, but any targets hit by the initial effect spread the ooze to units within 250 range, and
Oh, that's
after
cool.
a 1 second delay, continuing until it spreads the ooze to everything within a 250 range, like circled on the first target,
Uh-huh.
after a 1 second delay of getting hit by it. And then, like Varus's ultimate, it'll continue until there are no more available targets. And then, after 1.5 seconds of being affected by the ooze, the target is dealt 150% total AD and 100% AP magic damage, which is increased by 5% based on the number of previous targets affected by the ooze.
Okay, you said a lot of numbers right there. So if you're looking for feedback on those numbers, I would need to hear them again, but if not, then I can comment in general.
The
And that's
gist
pretty
is
cool.
the gist
Uh-huh.
is it has no initial damage. It spreads based on the number of targets in the area. The more it
Uh-huh.
spreads, the more damage it does. If it only hits like one person, the damage is it's decent, not super great. But if it ends up hitting like everyone on the team or a whole minion line, and you're one of the last people to get affected by it, you'll get dealt the most damage.
Okay, and can you be damaged by multiple spreads of this? If
No,
there's like a bunch of champions there?
no, that would be like an endless clusterfuck.
Yeah, it
That
would.
would be crazy though.
Like a brand ult.
That would be hella crazy.
Yeah. Um, okay, that one's interesting. I think the purple was probably my favorite there. That's a pretty cool mechanism for not only how to get like a really wide field, but how to do a lot of damage. Um, Let me ask you, why do you feel like Void Ooze was a good skill to keep on this champion?
Well, when I looked at his kit and I'm like, well, this is the closest thing to like a utility spell he has, and I kind of like the idea that he just barfed out a whole line of shit. And didn't
Yeah,
your rework do basically the same thing? You had him barf out a line of shit that got big.
I did have barf out a lot of shit that got big.
Okay, well, I guess you thought it was
Yeah.
kind of cool too.
I did, but I felt like the current mechanics of Void Ooze were both boring and underwhelming.
Well, that's why I spruced it
Um,
up.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you definitely spruced up the effects. I guess even with the purple one, you spruced up the mechanic. Yeah.
All right, that's it for Void Ooze. That one's the least crazy. I didn't think he needed a Trendemir level rework. I think some of his kits were worth salvaging. And then his ultimate actually took me a long time to come up with. I was staring at this for for a long time, and I was thinking of other champions, and I was thinking like all the AD carries in the game basically have three types of ultimates. They either have
Uh-huh.
an ultimate that is a big steroid, an ultimate that is a big CC effect, or they have an
Mhm.
ultimate that's a big nuke or a heavy damage
Tons and
spell.
tons of damage,
And I
yeah.
was thinking, like, you know what? Every ultimate of an AD carry is basically one of those three things. And I was thinking, that makes a lot of sense. So mine is one of those too.
Which one?
I get,
Oh, is it going to be different for each form?
no, I didn't want to go
Okay.
that crazy, but it does work into chemical composition.
All
All
right. So
right,
tell me about your ultimate, which is one of those things.
this is 100 mana, 90 to 50-second cooldown,
What's it
and
called?
this is anatomical overload.
Anatomical overload.
All
Okay.
right, Kog'Maw locks into his current chemical composition for the next 18 seconds, reducing his current HP by 2% of his max HP every second. That's the price by staying in this.
Can he
And
can he kill himself by doing this?
yes,
Yeah.
extended by 6 seconds for champion or epic monster takedowns. So there's kind of a double edged sword about how long that this can go on for. And during the duration of this effect, Kog'Maw gains 50 bonus range, 25 extra bonus magic damage on hit, and this is the big part, any effects of his current chemical composition towards his abilities are increased by 5 to 10% for every 5 seconds that he's currently in anatomical overload. So he kind of has to play on this knife's edge of how long he stays in it to keep getting a bigger percentage boost towards the unique effects of each chemical composition versus how close he is to just straight up dying, or if he has the sustain, or if the ability just times out.
Okay. So like so for example, at 0 seconds, Voidoo's would still do the red form would still do plus 150% 80 damage, whereas at 10 seconds it would do 50% more than that, so plus 225%.
5%.
Sorry?
Every 5, rank 1, every 5 seconds he's in anatomical overload, the
Uh-huh.
effects of his chemical composition towards his abilities are increased by 5%.
Oh, every 5 seconds, not every second. Okay. So 10 seconds in, it would do 10% more, so 165% 80 damage.
Correct. And that's
Okay.
at rank 1. It goes 5, 7.5, and 10% bonus every 5 seconds.
Okay.
And so that simply puts all of his specific chemical composition stuff into overdrive. And this will apply on literally everything that chemical composition is a bonus towards. Whether that's the healing effect, the armor shred, the slows, the critical strike multiplier, the bonus critical chance he gets on Bioarcane Barrage, every single thing that is a bonus integer for something that chemical composition gives, this will
Uh-huh.
increase by 5 to 10% every 5 seconds. So, with no takedowns, he gets basically 3 boosts in the 18-second window. And then if he keeps getting takedown, this can get into silly territory, but that's only if, he goes on a big killing spree. Meanwhile, he's losing 2% of his max HP every second. So, minimum cooldown, this will remove
Hope you brought
36%.
Triumph.
Yeah, this will remove 36% of his max HP. But
Hmm.
I haven't finished reading it yet. There is kind of a safety valve. While he's in anatomical overload, auto
Hmm.
attacks reduce the cooldown of Bioarcane Barrage by 0.25 seconds, so this gives him some kind of leeway to continue Bioarcane Barrage since it has a much longer cooldown in my version.
Yeah.
And the saving grace of this is anatomical overload can be ended early by changing Kog'Maw's chemical composition.
Okay, so he's not truly locked into his current chemical composition. It's just only as long as you want to use overload for.
He's locked into the sense that if he stays on the one he currently is, he'll keep getting a bigger, increasingly larger bonus. Whereas if he switches, he loses his ultimate and all of the bonus.
Right, right, right.
So locked in,
Okay.
I guess, is wordplay.
Yep, I get it. This is interesting. Um, the fact that generally, you're not going to be fighting more than 10 seconds after you use this the first time means that you're not going to have, even at rank 3, level 16, more than 20% bonus effect for all of your chemical compositions. If I were designing it, I would probably make all of the chemical composition bonuses throughout the kit a little bit less powerful, and then make this like maybe +2, +3% per second that you're in it. To really let it scale to +40, +50, or if you get like a really long fight with multiple takedowns, that's like the dream.
Well,
+70, +80%.
I wanted him to stand, stand up without his ultimate too.
I mean, a lot of, yeah, that's always a question on the champ design too, right? Some of the champs really are very powerful with their ultimate, not very powerful without, and some is just like a nice to have. This would definitely be a nice to have.
Yep.
So I guess the steroid is the route that you went here.
Correct.
And yeah, I don't know if I like that he has, more range and more magic damage since the W is already doing that in multiple forms.
It's very small.
Yeah. But I like the chemical composition effects being increased. I think that's pretty cool. And yeah, personally, if I were designing it, I would have made it a much more stark contrast between 0 seconds and 10 seconds.
Well, you can always turn it on and then have it basically primed when you know you're about to get a takedown. Then it's basically all but guaranteed to last more
That's what I'm
than
saying.
15
If
seconds.
the effects per second were a lot higher, that the advantage of actually looking in advance and sacrificing 20% of your HP to prime it so you can get into a fight, mow someone down, and then get the extension would be more rewarding. That's just my take on it. I don't think that yours is bad.
Well,
It's just
I think the additional range will be very hard to just sit on. You'll always want more auto attack range.
exactly, and that's why I think that it would just be used probably right as you get into a fight every time.
That was the
Remember what
intention.
the cooldown on this is?
90 to 50 seconds.
Okay. So maybe at level 16 you can actually use this for every single fight. Probably not at level 6. All right. Yeah, I was probably more crazy about the first half of your kit, where I really liked what you're doing with the Q and to some extent the W, minus maybe the just the inherent problems with builds. Fell off a little bit for me with the Voidus and the anatomical overload, but I think you definitely made him a more interesting champ. I think you did solve some of the problems that he has with self peel and teammate reliance.
Most
Um,
assuredly, it's a kite machine.
Still don't think he's going to be like an acceptable duelist against most other ADCs in this form. Tell me if you think I'm wrong.
I think depending on who the AD carry is, they'll have a shitload of range on him if he's in his volatile formation,
Mm-hmm.
for one. And he's always been, since he's a hyper carry, he's always going to be a DPS check to some degree. There's really no getting around that.
Yeah. I mean, I think being a tank shredder, being a DPS check, particularly just being a tank shredder who's going to be like the one unit that can take down a fed enemy fighter or tank is great. I think that's a good role in the game.
In
And
terms
I
of
have no
just
problems
a
with that.
straight dedicated auto attacker,
Yeah,
I think mine is pretty slightly weaker than he currently is, or like net neutral, because I did
but you
drop.
made him more versatile.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if every champ needs that type of versatility, but I think that you did a good job implementing it. Um,
I think a champion is bare bones and as one dimensional as he is needed some versatility.
Yeah. And you've basically, I will admit that you've added like the complexity into his kit with all of the different types of forms that he takes when he switches them and um and essentially having like 3 different skills on some of his skills in a much more intuitive way than I added complexity to his kit. I
Just
think you
his
did a
Q.
better.
His Q is the only one where the skills change.
I would say the W is enough of a change, particularly with the Q versus not the Q, the red versus the other two,
Yeah, you're right.
that I would call it a different skill entirely. Um, and I think you've done that in a much more intuitive and easy to pick up way than I did. I think you definitely outplayed me in that aspect.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I think the only things that I don't really like are the number of slows that you've introduced to the kit, and the fact that the ultimate doesn't really have one effect that I can say, oh, that's really cool. That's how I would play the ultimate. So those were small disappointments for me, but overall, I think you did a very good job. I think this is probably in line with how well you did the Malphite rework. The Blitzcrank, which maybe I was being a little nice when I rated you an 8,
No,
but
that one was my worst one.
I think it's in that league, but better. So I will give this another solid 8 out of 10. I think you did a good job here.
What am I smoking? I had the overdrive mechanic with that Blitzcrank. That one was awesome too. Make a note. I should never doubt myself.
Self promotion, Chrissy.
I completely forgot about my cool overdrive mechanic I came up with that thing. That one was
Yeah, you were
bitching.
just having stacks upon stacks upon stacks on that
No,
champion.
it depends how long he kept it. He blew up at the end. Remember, if he overdrive too long?
Hmm.
That was a good one. What was I
I told
smoking?
you I liked it.
They were
I
all
told you I
cool.
liked it. You keep talking about how your Tryndamere was the greatest. That was actually my least favorite of your 4.
Unbelievable.
Because you just did not get the Tryndamere identity in there, even though
That's
what
only
was there
because
was
his
cool.
base. That's only because
But unlike that one,
what he is
I think
now
that
is so crazy. That's why he needed a full Scion. That's why he needed a Scion Poppy Warwick level rework.
unlike that, unlike that one though, I think that you did nail the thematics here. I think that the idea of thinking of Kog'Maw as like this, this morphing, slimy void bug, that is going to have all these different very consistent play patterns between the different chemical compositions is a super cool idea. I think that you made that combination work the best with the Q. But even the W and the E have some really cool effects with it. And yeah, I mean, you really spiced it up just by adding those chemical composition effects without changing anything else about the mechanics of the skill. That is impressive. And as usual, I think you did a really good job.
Yeah.
So
All
this has
right.
got to be the longest recording time we've ever done on a champion judgment, right?
Most assuredly. You spent
What are
too
we up
much.
to? Right?
You spent too much time gushing about my chemical composition.
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't long before that point.
Yeah, it's at 2 hours 12 minutes.
Oh, holy hell! Just get a Kog'Maw to mow me down right now. Just spent 2 hours and 12 minutes of my life discussing this.
Well, next up will be.
If anybody was actually listening to this point, thank you very much. We appreciate your support. We really do. And hope that you liked what we came up with this. You said there's a next up?
I said next up you'll have to pick up our next champion because I have chosen Kog'Maw, so it's up to you now.
I will, and I haven't thought about it yet, but it was interesting. I guess doing this on one that we didn't really think was like desperately in need of rework. So I'll consider doing another one like that because it did create some really interesting discussion.
I wouldn't say he's
Um,
anywhere close to as desperate as Trendemir, but I do think he's up there.
oh, I can name probably 75 champions in the game that I would rework before Cog.
That is just silly. That's like
I thought
that's
so.
so many champs. That's crazy.
It is. It's half the champs in the game.
That's absurd.
I really think that he was in a pretty decent spot, and I think that's why I went so creative and so kind of off the board on trying to rework it because I felt like if I just did a minor rework, I would not have something that's better than what's there right now. Although you showed me with your version that that is probably possible.
Less is more, my man.
That's not how you felt about my Tryndamere.
Your Trendemir was garbage, bro. That Q, what were you thinking with that triple diagonal crazy ass 90-degree spin shit? That was whack.
Yeah. That was a choose your own adventure of the best sorts.
That shit was whack. Not in a good way either.
Yeah, well, don't hate it till you play it.
I don't want to play your Trendemir. He probably
I
sucks.
know, but if you played it, you would grow to like it. Maybe.
All right, that does it for episode 4 of the Champion Judgment. That was a damn long one for Kog'Maw.
We'll catch you next time. We promise to make it less than 3 hours.
Yep.